Hello and welcome to episode 342 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. My name is Mark. I am also known as the Green Tank, and I'm joined, as always, by, also known as the Orange Tank, Neelan.
Hello.
And also known as the Red Tank, Kellen. Kellen, you've been having audio issues for the past 2 episodes. Do we have those straightened out?
Oh, yeah. We're all good over here. This is Kellen. Hello.
Okay, finally. On today's episode, we are going to be leaving you wanting more as we talk about games that leave you wanting more. So these are games that have maybe a hook or something about them that really grab you and leave you excited for that next play. We'll dive into that a little more later. But before we do that, we'll be talking about the games we've played. Kellen is going to be talking about No Loose Ends. I'll follow that up with Eselsbrücke. And finally, Neelan will bring us to the fate of the Fellowship.
Eselsbrücke, you say?
Everybody's played Eselsbrücke, I assume.
Eselsbrücke.
I feel bad that I'm so late to the game, but yes, Eselsbrücke. Kellen, tell us about No Loose Ends.
No Loose Ends is a Japanese trick-taking game. Surprise! Wait a minute.
Okay. No Loose Ends is the latest trick-taking game from Taiki Shinzawa. Mark, are you familiar with his game?
I have not heard of No Loose Ends.
But you're familiar with Taiki Shinzawa's game?
Am I familiar with his game? Oh, as a entity, as a person. Maybe? Can you remind me what they have done in the
my
past?
God.
You know what's funny? I think Kellen has said the
Neelan.
sentence, are you familiar with Taiki Shinzawa's game? To confusion at least 3 times this week.
Neelan, don't tell people that I prepped the jokes. Neelan! By the 3rd time it's smooth, people love it. Taiki Shinzawa's game includes Masked Men, Ghosts of Christmas, 9 Lives, Big Top, American Bookshop, Charms, Twinkle Starship, Fives. This man is Japanese trick-taking in many ways for me.
Personified.
Yes, and that is his game, or his games. Whichever you prefer, both work. That's the joke, if you didn't get it. No Loose Ends, I believe, is a redo of a game that came out last year, which I don't understand, but here we are. I believe this was a review copy sent to us. This is a very straightforward game from Taiki Shinzawa, where it's like crime themed, which is kind of fun, and you are bidding before the round begins on how many tricks you believe that you will win. But each bid is just a card. So, Mark, you might bid 3 cards. Neelan might bid 2 cards. But then what you need to do is you need to win a trick that the card that won the trick can cover up one of those bids by either color or number. As in, if you bid with a 2 card, you have to win a trick with a 2 or win a trick with the color of that 2 that you bid in order to cover that up. And if you bid 3 cards, you would then need to win 3 tricks in order to have no loose ends, which would give you the perfect crime bonus and you would score more points. And so then you lose points based on how many loose ends there are. But then there is the way to sort of shoot the moon, which is called becoming a snitch, which is like you can bid and bid and bid and then pull back all your cards, double cross everyone. And then you're basically trying to shoot the moon, which actually hurts other players and makes their loose ends even worse. But otherwise, it plays like a must-follow trick-taking game where blue is always the trump suit. Absolutely very good. Like, I would say that this is the most very good. It's not like a, oh, that's interesting. It's like a, oh, that's very good trick-taking game. Neelan, you played this with us. How would you describe this one, Neelan?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I think that it was funny because as we were playing it, there was a little bit of debate about, do we like games we have to declare bids up front or not? And I would say unilaterally, yes. Those are my favorite trick-taking games. I love the pressure and the tension of trying to do that upfront hand evaluation, which I'm not usually very good at paying close attention to otherwise. But when I'm forced to be like, oh, what can I actually do with this hand right at the start of the round? That really gets me engaged at the outset. And like this ratchets up the tension on that so specifically because of the specificity. It's not just a number of bids. It's like, okay, if I put this card out, I'm both removing it from my hand and I need to find a way to win a trick with what's left in my hand that matches that. So that it's quite puzzly in a way that I thought quite fun. And I think that those are the trick takers I tend to gravitate towards. And honestly, the rest of it is fairly simple. It's beyond that pretty standard trick taking, other than that like one little good twist. So yeah, I liked it quite a lot.
Yeah, I do think it is a trick taker for more puzzly, more analytical thinkers than I, who goes by gusto and feeling, and because the more you bid, the more that players bid, the more open information there is, right? Like you just, half the cards are out on, not half, but a fifth of the cards are just out on the board, and you know that, so your ability to card count is huge and your ability to forward plan is big. The other thing that's interesting is that the length of each round is determined by whoever bids the most. So if someone is just an idiot and bids 5 tricks, that's going to change the amount of hands there are, because people will have a different amount of cards. So you won't even get to play all of your cards because the round ends as soon as any player runs out of cards. In terms of just like this does not feel like a gimmicky one at all. This just feels like, oh, this might be one of the 5 trick takers you should keep. I think in general,
Wow.
Yeah, it's very good. It's very good.
That's very high praise, because I was just about to ask. It sounds like you really like it, but given the quantity of trick takers out there, does it hold up? And for you to say it might be in that upper top echelon is quite a recommendation.
It's very good. I'm kind of in a collection crisis. Well, I don't have a collection, first of all, but I don't know. This one is staying. How many trick takers does one man need? I think the answer is we've passed that many years ago. But, it's always like, I don't think that I'm the crazy board game nerd, but then people have to remind me that I have a board game podcast. And here we are.
I think something that strikes me about it, and I'm not using the right word here. It's got a very like workhorse vibe, where it's like, this is just a good, solid trick taker. It doesn't have a crazy twist that's going to be like, oh, this is a little bit weird, bear with me.
Yes.
It's just good. It's good and solid.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the ones where you have to make your bid, like Nikosu, Dice, or even, my absolute favorite is like Wizard, right? Like, it's just that tension of like, not everyone's going to make it. And then so we played this with, let's just name drop, right? We're famous here. Monique and Naveen before you play. And I realized like near the end of the round, they were looking at, Naveen was like, oh, you shouldn't have played that card, Kellen, because it's clear Nealon has a high red because he had a low red out in his bid. And I was like, how did we think of this? And I'm like, oh wait, these are all smarter people than me, beating me at no loose ends. It's not a vibes-based game, it's actually do the analysis. So we'll leave that to Nealon, Naveen, and Monique.
I'm just a little surprised that Nealon referred to this as like a workman-like game, and without having any gimmicks, given the rich crime narrative that is woven into the
I don't
play.
know. In today's economy, that's the average man, right? Got to steal to eat, got to eat to live.
Yeah, and I'm over here role playing, being like, no one better snitch. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be the in this game. You know what I mean? And these people are just over here out thinking me, and I'm running circles. Actually, I think Monique destroyed us, if I recall correctly, and I think I ended the game with less points than I started the game with. So
yeah,
that was also humbling. It's crazy. I just get humbled, but then it has no effect on me. Like a duck.
Yeah, that's where you want to be, though.
Yeah,
that's where you want to be.
Yeah, that's just like living, right?
That's right. That's right. That's
All
a
right.
sweet spot as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly. That is Taiki Shinzawa. Everyone should be familiar with his game and this game, No Loose Ends.
So as I said earlier, I feel like I'm the last person in the world to do so, but I finally got around to playing Eselsbrücke, the game, as we all know, designed by...
What do we all know? What do you... How do you spell this?
I have to get past this to rehash everything everybody already knows, so let me just get through this, and then we can talk. So this is obviously designed by Stefan Dora, the designer of For Sale, Medina, and Intrigue, one of Kellen's favorites, among other games, and Rolf Zorlinde, designer of Finca and Animals on Board, among other games as well, back in, obviously, 2011, and published by Schmidt-Spiele. Again, can't believe it took me so long to play this. Now, of course, as we all know, Esselbrücke is German for, say it with me, Donkey Bridge.
Donkey Bridge.
Donkey Bridge, which is, of course, say it with me, a reference to mnemonic devices that you might use to remember things, right?
Obviously.
What are your guys' favorite mnemonic devices? For me, I'm going to go with my very educated mother just served us 9 pies to remember the planets. Yeah, that was my favorite. Although I guess
it was potatoes when I grew up.
Oh, nine potatoes? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think with Pluto being reclassified,
I was gonna say
as a
no
non-planet, I think
potatoes anymore.
it's like nachos, served as nachos.
You're right.
Which doesn't have the same flair to me. Kellen, any big mnemonic devices in your life?
Does like the choir ones count? It probably doesn't. I slid
What
a
is the
sheet
choir
of feet.
one?
I slid upon the slid sheet I sit.
Oh, no. That's just
That
your,
doesn't count.
mouth working?
That's mouth work. That's
Yeah,
different than a
it's
mnemonic.
It's a
That's
whole
mouth work.
difference.
But
Yeah, yeah.
try to do that, bro.
God.
You just reminded me. There were some I used to know for like scales in music, but I can't remember any of them are now. Anyway,
No, I have a few
Will-
of these. Actually,
Okay.
So, well, this doesn't count either. But there's an unbroken line in my right hand. Okay, literally
Yeah.
all the way through. There's one line.
Yeah. Kellen is now showing us his hand.
And then in my left hand, there's the same line, but it breaks in the middle.
Oh.
And
that's
this is how I know right from left. People don't have this. This is actually unnormal.
interesting.
Like one straight line, and
Yeah.
then that line breaks. Anyway,
You ever been to a palm reader? I bet if
Yeah,
you go to
that-
a palm
yeah,
reader,
Uh-huh.
they'd have an orgasm or something.
Oh, what? What? Excuse me.
You know what I do to remember right or left? I think maybe I'm I might be past this by now, but for a long time when I got confused, I would do and this is, I don't know if you guys did this. Certainly Nealon didn't, but like when you do the Pledge of Allegiance and you put your right hand over your heart,
Yeah.
that's how I would remember which arm was the. Or which
Oh, like
right
you
hand.
can just go into the Pledge of Allegiance at any point, like you're
Boom,
so
anytime.
American, and
I
that's
pledge
how
allegiance to
you
the flag
remember
of the
your
United
right
States of
hand.
America. Yeah.
Wow,
exactly.
okay.
I want to put this as a bumper at the end, the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
I think it's time for it.
Yeah, just in case
Anyhow.
anyone's unclear about where you stand.
Yes. That's right. Anyhow, I tried understanding why Donkey Bridge is a German mnemonic device. Something about donkeys being stubborn about crossing water without a bridge or something. I don't know. But it was something unsurprisingly lost in translation, at least for me. Now, I've obviously been joking. We're all joking here about finally getting around to this. I'd never heard of Eselsbrücke before playing it, and I dare say most of our listeners, especially our English-speaking ones, have also never heard of it, and that's because Eselsbrücke never got an official English release, at least in its original form. More
Are
about
you
that
on a
later.
Steffendora kick? Didn't
No,
you
am I?
Steffendora recently?
Maybe I did. I don't know. Who knows? I just go where the vibes take me. But what even is Eselsbrücke, I hear you asking? Well, it is a memory storytelling game. Now, 9 times out of 10, you would have lost me with that description. So if you're about to fast forward, I get it, but hold on for just 1 second and let me try to convince you. Might not work, but let me just give it a shot. So the way it works is everyone gets dealt stacks of tiles. I think the first round you have 3 in a stack, and it increases until you have like a stack of 5 for rounds 4 and 5. Anyway, these tiles all depict an image. It could be an egg or a car or whatever, and you need to make up a memorable story involving all of your tiles. So, you've got an egg, a car, and a box or whatever. You've got to come up with the most memorable story you can and tell it to the group involving those tiles. So you tell your story. You show everyone the tiles as you're telling the story to try to like have them associate it mentally with the story. And once you finish telling the story, you're done. The next person uses their 3 tiles to tell a story, and you keep going around. Now, in the third round, something changes. So in addition to telling your latest story, now with 4 tiles, after you do that, you are going to redistribute the 3 tiles you used for that first round to everybody. So 3 rounds have now passed of everybody telling stories. You go back to the story you told in the very first round, and you pass out the tiles to everybody in the game. Now, everybody looks at their tiles that they've got in hand, and based on that tile, tries to remember what the story was and any of the other tiles that were involved in telling the story. If you get it right, so like I might get past an egg and I'm like, oh, okay, there was that story about the witch who was driving around to the swamp and she was looking for this egg that I have in my hand. Now, was that the story? And if that was the story, what was the image? Was it a witch? Was it the car? Whatever. So you're trying to remember not only the story, but like what tiles were used in telling that story, what keywords were used.
But this is from the story that you told, or the story that the player told?
That another player told. So
Okay.
when it gets back to you in the third round, you're going to tell a new story with, again, 4 tiles, but then you're going to go back to the first round story that you told and pass out the tiles.
Got it.
And then each person in turn is going to try to remember one tile that was in that story that they don't currently have in their hand. If they get it right, then whoever is currently holding the tile gives it to them. That's a point. If they get it wrong, you lose some number of tiles, and this is quite a punishing game where like the amount of tiles you lose for getting things wrong is like a lot. And so this is a game where like the winning score in the end of 7 rounds can be like 9 points. So it's pretty brutal. The storyteller also gets a bonus if everybody guesses all the tiles from a story. So that's why you're encouraged to tell a very memorable story, because you get a bonus if everybody guesses all the tiles involved in your story. And that's basically Eselsbrücke. Now, I have to admit that I'm not a big fan of memory games, although I don't really mind them too much when they're a component in a party game like I think this is. I'm even less of a fan of storytelling games. And if you absolutely hate both of those mechanisms, then maybe/probably you'll hate Eselsbrücke. I'm not sure. But maybe you won't. I say that because I had a really, really great time with it. Once we understood how it kind of worked, it was funny hearing stories get more and more outlandish as we try to make sure people would remember them. And so this is going to be very, maybe unsurprisingly, group dependent. I think that this is a game that, even saying that, probably doesn't work 100% as a party game that you would want to break out with anyone or that anyone want to play. It doesn't have that like family appeal, I don't think. But I think it's a pretty perfect party game for hobby gamers who want to play a silly game that does have some of that hobby board game structure, if that makes sense. I, again, absolutely loved it, way more than I thought. And it's the type of game that I'd be very excited to try out at a convention or something like that. Now, I should say that this has been re-released a couple times, once as Donkey Bridge and once as a Crazy Storyteller. Those are an English and a Korean edition, respectively, I believe. Now, I had never, again, heard of Eselsbrücke. I much less heard of these two games. I looked them up, and there are pretty significant changes to the game where I think they've sort of sanded off some of the brutality of the scoring. They made it much quicker. I think those games are maybe more approachable in terms of playing with family, because again, I think they're a little bit of softer experiences. But I have to say that I am pretty smitten with Eselsbrücke, and so that is the version that I would recommend playing. Again, very group dependent. The brutality of the scoring is sort of incongruent with the rest of the game, but also adds to the silliness of the entire thing. So yeah, I would recommend, if you're into at all storytelling and memorization in a party game that feels like a little bit more than a party game, I would recommend checking out Eselsbrücke. Again, that version only came out in German, but because all it is like pictures, it is pretty much language independent. So you can definitely get a copy of Eselsbrücke and play it, even if you don't know the German language. So yes, that is Eselsbrücke by Schmidt-Spiel and designed by Stefan Dora and Rolf Zorlinde.
Does it have Time's Up vibes at all? Like where you're trying to remember stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good analogy. Obviously not a one-to-one, but yeah, there is that. Like one of the funniest things is like when it comes to recollecting the story and you get past one of the tiles and you're like, oh my God, I remember the poison. Now, what was the poison? Like, because you have a poison tile in front of you. What was the story of the poison? Okay, she put the poison in the roast beef and served it to him on the table. But was the table the tile? I'm trying to remember. And sometimes you're saying this out loud, it depends on like what your group vibe is. But yeah, a lot of laughter and a lot of that kind of like recollection things, stuff that you'd get from Time's Up, I think.
I'm just reading a BGG thing where someone said, this is my most will you sell this game to me game that I have in my collection. Do you think that
interesting.
Do you think that we would have fun goofing around with this with each other?
100%. 100%.
If the players bring it, this is like the shut up and sit down effect where it's like, it's fun with them, but like it might not be fun if you're boring people.
Well, and
how did that go? I got an insult and I got a name drop.
It was perfect. I think you checked every single box. Yeah, again, very group dependent. I think if you could have people who complain about memorization and storytelling, like, okay, don't play this, forget about it. But if you are with gamers who want something a little more meaty but want to play something silly, then this is perfect. This is like perfect.
Yeah, I'd be excited to play this.
Okay, I'm going to be talking about, and I realize now I did not get the full title. This is, in fact, The Lord of the Rings, Fate of the Fellowship. Sorry about that.
You deprive us a colon.
I know.
How dare you?
Okay, well, what is going on with the whoring out of this IP right now?
There are a lot of Lord of the Rings games. You're not wrong. I guess what it is quite specifically is that there were two really good ones in relatively quick succession, because I think that Duel for Middle-earth is, if not my favorite, one of my favorite games from last year, and this has so much hype behind it right now. But yeah, you're
But
right.
it's not
There's,
the trick-taking game. And this is
you're right. There's also the Fellowship of the Ring trick-taking game. No, you're right. There's
and
that
it's
too.
not the card game War of the Ring, which also happened, right?
Yeah, I mean, that feels a little bit removed now. But yeah, I assume that it's one of those IPs, there's always a steady trickle of like Lord of the Rings games. But you're right. There were like 3 big hits in like the space of a year and a half. So it does feel like a very, very big focal point for Lord of the Rings games, especially good ones, which, to not bury the lead, this is a good one. Yeah, so this is a full-fledged, epic, cooperative adventure. If it is not similar in weight by an order of magnitude, it's definitely similar in scale to something like War of the Ring, which is to say that you have pretty much the entire map of Middle-earth that's relevant for Lord of the Rings. You have the Fellowship. They are starting in their respective parts of the board. Frodo is trying to trek all the way across the map to destroy the ring. You have orcs moving around the map. You have the forces of the West sort of trying to fight them. It is kind of the full-fledged depiction of everything going on in that story. One of the important things I will say up front is that this is, as listed on the box, a pandemic system game. It's designed by Mr. Pandemic himself, Matt Leacock. And what that means is that the basic mechanism of drawing cards at the end of every turn to determine where are the orcs going to show up, where are they going to move, is kind of the same as it is all the way back in original Pandemic, which is to say that you start by drawing 2 cards at the end of every player's turn. That will show you where the orcs come up and where they're moving to. That escalates as you draw these, what they're called Skies Darken cards, so the threat gets more and more intense. Those cards get shuffled back on top of the deck, so they keep resurfacing at the same point, so you kind of get these like big floods as the game progresses, those orcs just moving across the map. The base mechanics kind of work quite similarly to previous iterations of Pandemic. In particular, the one that most comes to mind is Fall of Rome. And
yeah, that was what I was going to ask. Because it just feels like Fall of Rome had this sort of fighty...
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to get around where my bearings are with this
Absolutely.
thing.
I think
nothing about this.
Definitely the touch mark, because the specific, you have multicolored routes that will show you when you draw a card, okay, they're going to move from this city to this city along the green route, and then you advance everyone along that track. That is just straight from Fall of Rome. So what that means is at various points, you're sort of trying to have to corral your own troops. You can only move them with your characters, so you can have to pick them up, drop them off in places to defend these places, attack orcs by sort of heading them off before they get to your strongholds, because like all of the ways that you can kind of lose this game all revolve around this one resource, which is just called hope, right? So if you lose a stronghold,
hope?
Hope, yeah, it's
God.
Well, it's kind of representative of basically the Fellowship and Frodo
point?
losing hope. Yeah, well, it's literally like one of the main motifs of the books, I would say, which is like this idea that they're all riding on this small hope that is this small chance that they have. And as the Fellowship loses hope, as Frodo and Sam are getting into Mordor and Gollum shows up and it all gets corrupted, like corruption of the ring and hope are kind of like polar opposites, I would say. Like that I would say that's a pretty common theme.
Kellen wants the resources to be like wood and wool and
No.
Yeah. Kellen, the greatest resource is hope.
No, I understand that.
We've always said
but
that.
You can't say it out loud. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it
Doesn't
sounds
say-
silly when you say it out loud. You're not right. You're not wrong.
It's like we don't tell each other we love each other. We just and we can't, because then that ruins something.
Yeah.
I don't
Am
know.
I
It's
wrong?
weird, Kellen. I keep telling you I love you. You just never say it back.
Yeah, I don't.
So, if you lose all of your hope, there's the game over. And the other way you're trying to keep that in balance, if you reclaim strongholds, you gain a little hope. Although, importantly, if you lose a stronghold and then gain it back, you gain less than you lost. So you never want to just like try keeping that in balance. You really need to be defending those. And those are kind of, again, similar to War of the Ring, the two halves of the game, which is there's this half about sort of trying to manage the board presence and like get your troops into place and fight battles, and there's a hefty chunk of dice rolling in this, although even though you're rolling dice, it often amounts to kind of just like tit for tat, 1 for 1. Like the dice are fairly balanced in that way. More often than not, I would say if you're managing stuff correctly, you're actually doing better against the enemy than against you, but ultimately you are still rolling dice. The second half is completing these objectives, and this is actually where I think the game really, really shines, because you get 3 random objective cards at the start of every game, and those are your 3 objectives for the game, and then you always have the objective to destroy the ring. So you complete those 3 objectives, you destroy the ring, you've won the game. But those 3 objectives are so bespoke from like story elements drawn from the game. So like here's an example from a game I did yesterday, which is you move Aragorn through the mountains to pick up the ghosts from the paths of the dead. You move him down to like the bottom of Gondor, fight all of the orcs there. So it's recreating quite specifically like a very prominent moment in the books and the films, right? So just in the course of completing that objective, you are just mechanically recreating a very precise component of the story. And then that's happening on like 3 different places around the map. Because also you're trying to get Moria recaptured or something like that. Or you're trying to get a little force to Rivendell. So you just, by naturalistically sort of engaging with the mechanics of the game, even though there's no very quite specific, like, oh, this is exactly where this person will go, this is exactly where this person will go, you end up kind of just naturalistically recreating moments from the books and the films, which is just, I think it's quite lovely. For a game that's not quite as like, oh, and when this exact trigger happens at this exact time, then this exact event happens, the events just kind of emerge narratively naturally. And part of why that really works quite well is you'll kind of find that, like, okay, the parts of the map where the board is more constricted are harder to travel through. So you end up taking Frodo through the secret routes. You get down to Mordor and there's a path that is like, okay, just go through the Black Gate, and that costs a lot of resources, or there's this other path down the back which costs less resources. So again, subtle ways that it's just kind of through the mechanics, giving you the story of the game. And because of the fact that you're getting those 3 different objectives every game and you know, a bunch of different characters, all of which have their own special powers, you're getting kind of just different subsets of the stories in each one of these games. Okay, I think that's great. I think it's quite thematically solid. It's certainly one of the best thematic big Lord of the Rings games I've played. Big caveat, big downside, I will say, it's still pandemic. And what I mean by that is that the tedium of drawing those shadow cards at the end of every single turn does still take up a lot of time. It's a lot more fiddly than it's ever been, because it's find this one spot on this massive, I would say quite messy map where the orcs are going to show up, find the specific route that they're moving from location to location, move all the orcs along that route. If they meet any enemies, roll some dice to do a battle. So those end of turn phases, which again is every single player's turn, can start to feel quite tedious. I always thought that was a problem with base Pandemic. It's much more of a problem in Fate of the Fellowship. And the consequence of that is this game takes about 2+ hours to play. Which, again, if you're in it for a big evenings or afternoons worth Lord of the Rings experience, that's fine. I tended to find in the games I was playing that I was losing steam a little bit towards the end. As much as I was mostly enjoying it, it did just feel like, I wish this was like half an hour shorter, or even like half as long. Because, you know, as a reminder, like base Pandemic is an hour tops probably. And I think most of the versions of Pandemic have kind of fallen into that realm. So this is twice as long at least than it's ever been before. So yeah, definitely a huge downside in my opinion. Like, you have to really be in it for a big, long, and probably the heaviest Pandemic-like game that you've played before to like really be into this. But if you are a Lord of the Rings fan, and if you like that story and that world as much as I do, I think that's going to be enough to make you feel like you're getting what you want out of this.
What was your player count?
I've only done it at 2 players. Several games at 2 players. Yeah.
And would you imagine that the time would be longer with more players? Probably, right?
I think almost certainly. Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Right.
And for what it's worth, even those long games I'm talking about, that is at 2 players. So, like, if you were at the full complement of 4, like, I would have to imagine it would get longer. Maybe not. I'm trying to think about Pandemic, like, really. And I guess, actually, whether you're doing the turns, you're probably going to end up with the same amount of turns in your average game.
But I think you would expect a longer game.
Yeah, I think just by virtue of the fact, because it's cooperative, right? And the game does encourage you to like play with open hands. I think it's literally in the rule. So there's just going to be a lot more conversation and planning and that before every turn. So I think the beat to beat would probably be as long, but everything else would take slightly longer at the edges.
The person you were playing with, were they also big fans of Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
In general?
Yeah.
So given the time, like the relatively longer gameplay, and the fact that you guys are both Lord of the Rings fans, was that a crucial component in you, A, enjoying it, and B, being able to, like, stomach is too strong a word, but, like, be okay with the length of time? Like, do you think that non-Lord of the Rings fans would have a much more difficult time sticking out for 2.5 hours, or do you get?
No, totally. Yeah. I get your question, and I think that like my gut says that the answer to that, unfortunately, is yes. If you were not a Lord of the Rings fan, you would get to the point quicker where you were starting to feel like, okay, this is dragging on a little bit. You know?
Yeah.
And that's, I can't say that for sure, but like, that's my impression.
And there are tons of like pandemic fans out there who just it being a pandemic game is more than enough to get them going.
Absolutely.
So I totally understand that. Yeah.
I do think that specific thing of it being both the latest pandemic game, which is obviously a hugely popular franchise in itself, and a quite good Lord of the Rings game is going to be enough for this. I mean, it's already proving to be quite well beloved. But I do think that like you're going to struggle a little bit if you're neither of those things. I find it hard to think that that's going to hold up. Because one of the things I think that's quite apparent, unfortunately, I think, is that the pandemic system is showing its age a little bit. We've had a lot of good cooperative games in the last 5-10 years that have streamlined a lot of these board management elements quite a lot, or done away with them entirely, and still ends up producing like very sort of good puzzly thinky cooperative games. So going back to it was kind of this interesting reminder of like, oh yeah, I remember why I don't play that much Pandemic, you know?
Sure. I'll also just say, like, in looking this up to follow along with Neelan's description, it turns out that there is a version on BGA. So if you want to try it out, you can try it on Board Game Arena.
I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because I hadn't thought of that before you were just about to say it. I would encourage you not to play this in BGA.
Okay.
So for what it's worth, I did play this first on BGA a couple of months ago, and I found it incomprehensible on there. Because part of the problem is because obviously the upside, right, is that all the bookkeeping happens automatically. Yeah. But then you come back to your turn and you're like, it's too much to take in from turn to turn without seeing it happen.
See.
Like, so you just look at the map and you see orcs are all in different places, and like it's just an incomprehensible mess. I would actually, to the extent that when I came out of that game on BGA, I was actively encouraging people like, look, I think this game might be okay, but I'm shocked they put it on BGA because it left such a bad impression of it. And this was in the pre-release, right? So
yeah,
weird. I think that's a very common sentiment. It seemed to be a rough game to play, especially asynchronously, because it's co-op.
It seems like a great product.
Yes, totally.
But it's like, I guess my question, Neelan, is abstractly for you. Like, let's say Lord of the Rings represents hope for you, and let's say Pokemon represents hope for me. Like, you wouldn't want every game that you own, and I say that like facetiously, but like, you wouldn't want even half of your games to be Lord of the Rings themed, right? Like, there actually is a tipping point.
Absolutely.
And maybe it doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying. This doesn't matter for this game. It's going to be a huge success. But like, do you want 10 Lord of the Rings games?
No, totally. You do have me suddenly thinking, like, how many do I have and how many do I want to keep, right? Like, I think I currently have 4 Lord of the Rings games, and they kind of occupy different niches a little bit. And I think that's fine in that sense, but like, yeah, I'm honestly on the fence about whether this is one that is going to stick around long term. It does do something which I don't have, which is it is a more accessible, medium heavy cooperative game, you know?
Yep.
Which is a nothing. And especially when you can just sell people on like, hey, everyone knows this theme, here's your buy-in. Because I would break this out sooner than I would break out Spirit Island with people that weren't heavy gamers. So yeah. One thing I will just say also very quickly, just because I didn't mention it already, lovely production in a lot of ways. I think the art of the map is a bit messy from a graphic design perspective, but like the pieces are very tactile. You have these little orcs that just kind of, or basically the cubes, and that they are just like little wooden meeples, big chunky bits, Nazgul that are like on like flying stands as miniatures that fly around the map. It just has incredible table presence when it's all laid out. Very cool looking game. That is The Lord of the Rings Fate of the Fellowship by Matt Leacock and Z-Man Games.
Okay, before we move on to the main topic, Kellen, I'm seeing here that you have a segment here called Comings and Goings that you want to introduce.
That's right. Brand new segment, baby. Here we go. No, people like to. People want to know what's coming and what's going.
Yeah. So, also, why did you spell coming that way?
Listen, all right. So I just wanted to list off because I'm getting rid of some games and I bought some new games, and it's like even as I look at my own list of comings, I'm like I've made some mistakes. You know, I have some regrets here. So I just wanted to read them off in rapid fire and then have you guys tell me I'm right or I'm wrong. Right. In terms of what I have purchased and what I have gotten rid of. So I think people like this. This is what they like.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, people like lists. I've always said people like lists, listing things.
That's right. Okay, so in the Cummings category, we have 2 copies of Innovation 4th Edition as gift copies. This goes out of print, and I wanted to give the 3rd edition to so many people, so now I've got new copies coming. Here's the regret. Salt Fjord, the redo of Santa Maria. I just have always wanted to play this game, so I bought Saltfjord. I'm sure this is going to be going. Fives, another game from Taiki Shinzawa in the magenta line, the green Fivura, if you've played it. I bought the second edition of Telestration's 12-player party pack because the box is smaller and my last copy is out of sorts. And then I got a new Oink game called TRND. What is that short for, everybody?
Trend.
I assume so, but who can say? In the goings category, we have Ready, Set, Bet High Roller Edition. Neelan made me play a game that is better than it and much smaller than it, and now I hate him. Jump Drive. Why would I play this when I could play Race for the Galaxy with Christina? Saxon Legacy Collection Blue. Terrible game. Ingenious 3D. Not as good as the other one. Bloodstones. I haven't played it in like 2 years. Here's the thing. Do you guys have a rule about goings? Like if you haven't played it in X amount of time? Do you know what I mean? Like that should be a default rule.
There are some games I will give leeway to on that, but like, yes. Tiger and Dragon, an Oink game that is too large, and it's good. It's good. It's very fun. The Great Plain, a 2-player game I've not returned to. Havilandia, a Reiner Knizia game I've not returned to. Dirge the Rust War. I have so many other Cloudus games I prefer. Sovereign's Chained, unplayed. For shame on this one, unplayed. Vabonk, okay. Party game for gamers, okay? I don't even have a group of gamers playing games with me right now, so how can I have party games for those gamers? See what I mean?
You're replacing that spot with Esselbrücke now, right?
Yeah, I got
it. For gamers,
I picked it up already. Mobile markets, smartphone is better. Offshore, unplayed for shame. This is where I'm at, guys. But, like, these are the comings and goings in my life.
The only one I'm a little bit sad about there is Bloodstones, because that seems like one I should play at some point. Oh, will I ever play Bloodstones if I don't play it with you? That's a good question.
Oh, he's like the only one. Oh, don't do that.
Well, the thing is,
do you want it?
I guess I'm working on the assumption that you wouldn't want to play it, but maybe that's not
No, I would
right.
play it.
Let's talk. Maybe I'll take that one
Sure.
off your hands.
Yeah. Well, these will all be in my garage, so if you want to break in until I can figure out how to get rid of them. I don't know. I always am interested in what people are buying and getting rid of. Maybe that's interesting. Maybe it's not. Let's move on to our featured topic. Mark, you butchered it in the upfront. I just want to be clear. I want to be very clear that the name of this episode is Oops, All Foreplay. Okay? That is the name of the episode. Neelan, don't even attempt to change it. Okay? He has editorial control of the metadata. Congratulations. You're in charge of something. The episode is called Oops, All Foreplay. And I'm obsessed with this idea right now, okay? And this sounds like a joke.
Foreplay?
Well, yes. Love it. Big fan. I'm obsessed with this idea, and it actually came to me because I've been listening to Lord's new album a lot. I'm a big Lord stan. I don't reveal that often. Kind of like the hope and the love thing. You don't share this with people. But all of the songs on the album have this like slowly ramping tension, and then there's a payoff moment, but like it's like 12 seconds long. And like modern pop is like all about just confection, sugar, over the top. You know, it's running the chorus 6 times, you know, before you've even gotten 2 minutes into the song. And like what has made this Lord album have staying power for me is that I just like want the chorus to keep going, or I want this moment at the end of the song to keep going. And it's only like 5 seconds long. And so I was wondering if there were board games that give you that feeling of like either right as it's getting good, it ends, or right as you're powerful, it ends. And is that being done intentionally? Like we know this is the fun part of the game. You know, it's a little bit like in video games, like in League of Legends. It's really fun when you're at the 15-minute mark and everyone is powered up and ready to go, but you have to play the beginning part of the game to get to that game, and it has this arc that sort of leaves you satisfied, and that's why you start back over. So are there games that are Oops, All Foreplay? And this is a great title for an episode. Games that leave you wanting more. Do you want me to go first, or do you guys understand the prompt?
No, I'd be curious, like, just to riff on like the idea a little bit here, which is that one of the things I was trying to figure out when you had proposed this topic is like, you know, we were talking back and forth about like where the specific thing is in this, like where on the curve is like the most important part for a game to hit. And I think the thing that you were sort of saying repeatedly was like, okay, no, it's a game that like that knows how to finish and finish strong, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well. Yes,
to some extent.
But to some extent, yes, or it's like, here's a thing. Like, I don't have the good this and that, but like One Night Ultimate Werewolf, okay, has no foreplay because it's all play. It's one round, the game's over, and then you play again. So that is a game that you want to play over and over again, but that's because the game is 5 minutes. Where it's like, is there a best part of a game of Blood on the Clocktower, or is the whole game the game? So, like, the easiest example here is engine builders and when they end, right? So, like, people will talk about Agricola, and Agricola is perfect for me because right as I've gotten to my farm is like functioning, the game ends. So it's sort of like misery the whole time, and then right as you clear the moment. But other folks hate that, and they want to do this sort of Terraforming Mars where I run my engine a couple times, or my caverna where it's more peaceful. So Agricola, great example for me.
Yeah.
Splendor is a great example for me, where right as I feel like, oh, I can buy anything I want, I'm like this powerful demigod of the Splendor universe. Suddenly the game is over, and then I just want to get back to that feeling of when I am powerful. So what games are like that for you?
The one that pops into mind whenever this is like anything in this vein is brought up is Voyages of Marco Polo, the original Marco Polo game, because I feel like that's a game where like you're struggling, and then you start getting powerful, and just as you are able to do things finally, the game ends. It always feels like, after tons of times, like it feels like it ends one round too early. It's like part of the reason that I find myself, even when I haven't played in a long time, and like thinking, oh, I'm sort of done with Marco Polo. Like when I do play it and I do feel like crescendo and the game ends, it makes me want to play it again. It does like reintroduce it as a good game that I want to play in my mind just because of that dynamic.
So
that
let's speculate on behalf of, people who are smarter than us, Simone Luciani and Tashini here. Is it a balance thing that is preventing that game from running 3 more rounds? Or is it we know this is the sugar at the end of the whatever, and we're like trying to give you just enough of it that you actually want to replay it? Because this is replayability in another form to whatever degree.
I think trying to figure this out using Marco Polo as the example is like especially illuminating because...
Oh, okay. Illuminating.
Yes, because there is a Marco Polo 2 where they abandoned that. They went with, no, okay, let's just let you do stuff then. Maybe there was an outcry. Maybe they just want to try something different. I don't know what exactly the genesis was for making Marco Polo 2, but like Marco Polo 2 does not have that struggle. Oh, I'm getting good. I'm getting strong, and it ends. It has the, okay, I'm good. Like starting with round 2, pretty much. Like I can sort of do things. And it's one of the reasons why I like it so much less. So maybe they did plan it and then they got a backlash, or maybe they didn't plan it and then realized, oh, we made this like end too quickly. My suspicion is that it was made as intended to have that crescendo and ending because it was an interesting way to design games, and so it probably leads to like maybe, I don't know, this is me speaking without any knowledge, but like it probably leads to like an easier design because you don't have to worry about people getting super powerful and what the ramifications are to very powered up players in the game, because it probably throws off a lot of the economies in the game. But whatever the reason was for doing it that way, it seems like they tried something different with Marco Polo 2 to much lesser results, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting in that case because like I'm actually more inclined to believe that it was like a happy accident, and like not in the sense that like they didn't know what they were doing and it ended up, anything like that. But like I do think that you can tell from a lot of the other Luciani and like other Italian designer games that I would say that the curve is a little bit more flat, and it doesn't feel like they have those like explosive finishes the way that Marco Polo does. And like you said, that could be because they overcorrected and found that more people liked that. I do think that what is interesting, we do see a lot of games where that is a more popular way to do it. Like Terraforming Mars, I think, a prototypical example. Incredibly popular game where I would absolutely agree that you are just in this realm of running your engine at like peak efficiency for too long, or even just like not having that steady build up in a way that leaves you feeling like very, very, very satisfied by the end. And one of the things that's interesting about that to me is one of the thoughts I had when I was thinking about this question is this like such a quintessential Colony question, right? Which is like one of the things I think about a lot with Colony is like the idea that every game should have like a big moment, like a moment that this is where like everyone was like paying attention, dialed in, and like you were hyper focused on like the big move that someone made. And like the games that kind of match this description are ones that all build that into like the end of the game, like the big finish, right? Whereas by comparison, I think a lot of more standard Euros, quote unquote, that isn't a big concern, and that seems to be like a more prevalent design choice, I would say. Also, unfortunately, because even though I sort of like a lot of games like that, like, for example, I would say that A Feast for Odin is a game that does none of this sort of thing, is one of my favorite games, but I still appreciate it when a game really, really builds that curve around that. It's a big contrast. Like you mentioned Blood in the Clocktower. I was trying to think about that in the context of this question as well. Like that game has a fairly steady pace. That game is also quite specifically designed to build to a climactic end, but it's such a long game, and like I would say 99% of it you're kind of in the same sort of like tension throughout. But by contrast, something like Resistance, for example, it ratchets that tension up mission over mission over mission, and then you're in and out in like 40 minutes. So It's always building to this crescendo constantly quite effectively. And I think that's the thing I kept coming back to, was this idea of like games that either give you a power curve, whether that's like engine building or Comet, it was an example for me that I think does this quite well, where you are escalating in power and the game is usually over before people are just running around their map with like all of their powerful monsters.
It's like we played maybe a game that is like the exact opposite of this game that I don't know that we'll ever cover on the podcast, the Scarlet Pimpernel, which is like a Hansa Teutonica adjacent Euro game where, like, I swear to God, the range of points was 1 to 3 or 0 to 3, I guess. No matter what you did, every token you placed could only score you 0 to 3 points. And there were some good moments, let's call it, but there's no ending. The beginning is the same as every round. The rounds are all... And it was fine. I liked it. It was fine. But it was like... It was all foreplay. You see what I'm saying? Oops.
Yeah.
All foreplay. Yeah. What about... Okay, like... Innovation, right? The fourth
Yeah.
edition, right, is another topic. Like innovation is the master of escalation, but like where it pops is sort of the like question of it all, right?
Yes.
And like where I'm at with fourth edition is that like it goes to chaos, or it goes just a little bit too far into, and it's not too long, but like it lets you be too wacky or too powerful at the end. And so I just wonder how much of this is like balance, right? How much of this is just, if we gave everyone all the powers, because people talk about games that make you feel powerful as like something that you want, but like balance, becomes the constraint there, because if everyone is crazy powerful, like how does this even work? And so I'm just like really interested in this idea that, are the designers designing for this? And I don't know, I'm not a designer.
One of the things I was interested, a specific game that I was trying to get interested to get your take on in this context, was Rumble Nation for both of you, because like to some extent that is like the exact definition of this, right? Which is like you spend 90% of the game doing all this play setting, and then it just explodes at the end. It just, the whole thing runs and you see how it pays off. And it's not exactly right, because that's almost like a scoring phase more than it is anything else. But does that satisfy this idea of like, because the fun, quote unquote, part of that is all backpedaled to like the last 5 minutes, that fits this description, where because everyone's just like, oh, now I see how that all was going to go out, you just are eager to like do it again.
Yeah, there's an element of how the game obfuscates the board state, and how that plays into how tense the game gets,
Yeah.
Because there are games like we're playing like a bog standard Euro, whatever, just another Euro, but like Neelan puts 1 cube in this area adjacent to my area, and all 4 of us know exactly what it means, and it's like this electrifying moment where it's like Neelan is setting up for 4 turns from now when he's gonna like me with this one placement of this 1 cube. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like when everyone is keyed into the game, those moments become electric. And so Rumble Nation is a little bit of this like gesturing. Wait a minute, what does that mean? But like if people aren't paying attention, or if people are just playing really casually, it doesn't electrify itself. But it's really when everyone is like deeply engaged that you're like, oh, this is going to affect this region, which is going to affect that region, which is going to do this. I know what you're doing, bro. And so, yeah, I mean, whether that player tension is emergent or, whether the game explicitly, I think Rumble Nation is exactly what we're talking about, because it sort of is a spring that has to go off, and
Right.
It does go off and then cascades out.
I don't know if it's exactly what you're talking about, but it does sort of give me the same feeling, but in a really unique sort of way because it not only has a tension build, but also it's all about the unraveling of the tension, is Moon Colony Bloodbath.
Okay.
Which is a game we played at the Dice Tower West. It's all about engine building with the knowledge that your engine is going to like be destroyed at the end, and it's all about holding on to the engine as much as possible. So in some ways, I guess it's like the exact opposite of what you're saying, because you're becoming less and less powerful, and it's all about holding on to any power you can. But I think that tension, that becoming powerful, knowing that it's going to end, is like, at least for me, a very, very exciting moment in the game. And the reason why I wanted to play it at the convention multiple times, because you know you're going to get there, but you know it's going to be fleeting, and it's all about just holding on to whatever power that you've amassed as long as possible. But it's funny because you do have that communal feeling, because everybody knows that the engines are breaking down, and there's like sort of like everybody's like in it while they're working on their own thing. It's sort of like it is in a lot of ways face down, because you're working on your own engine and you're not really interacting too much. There is that like communal feeling of like, okay, we've hit the peak, now let's hold on tight sort of thing. But that climax in the middle of that game is, I thought that's what we're doing, is the key to it, and why I think it sort of works, at least for me in this regard.
And that's the question is, is Donald Vaccarino, a very smart designer? Is he looking at how long you're sitting in the mid-game, let's call it, where things are working for everybody? And you want things to be working for long enough that it doesn't feel like despair, but then you have to break down so that you can start again. So it is like how long do you sit in that ecstasy? Right. Is it 2 turns? Is it 4 turns? Is it 6 turns? And then it's like, oh, now we're on this downward slope. I think that like from a pacing perspective, Moon Colony Bloodbath is so novel that's part of it. I think it's more novel than it is good, and I would love to see it like it personally cranked another few times, but it certainly has a different feel than many other engine-y things.
Speaking of Donald Vaccarino, I always thought that like Dominion is like a really good example of this, and the other pure deck builders. I mean, deck building, I think, is a mechanic that's built around this idea, right? Which is that you're watching everything escalate, and in a good deck builder like Dominion, it does end before everyone is just running their deck 5 times,
Yeah, well, and Dominion actually like I love Dominion. I've sold and rebought Dominion. I was just looking at collection as I was tearing things down. I think I have 2 unplayed Dominion expansions. I think I have this like prepper thing, okay? You know what I mean? Like where it's like I've got some beef jerky and then I've got 2 Dominion expansions and shrink for when the apocalypse happens. Like how many like the electricity goes out, but I'm here and I've got a Japanese themed Dominion expansion for when times get tough. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, and a couple strips of turkey jerky, and you're good.
No, not turkey jerky, bro.
Buffalo? You know Buffalo?
Okay, I've had that. Actually, okay, biltong? Okay,
biltong,
Neelan?
Okay.
Yeah,
Neelan.
That's Neelan.
Like, thank you, Neelan, for biltong. Absolutely. No, not a joke. Not a joke. Well, I mean, I guess thank you, Neelan. Like, it's not, have you ever made biltong? I
invented the stuff, so...
Yes.
No, there is a common sentiment. Biltong, just the better jerky, basically.
Biltong is the better jerky, that's clear. No, but Dominion, actually, for me, the sort of ruining of base Dominion is that, like, you don't get to use all the special powers, and then right as your deck is, like, perfect, it's like, oh, start buying victory points, and now your deck sucks again. So it is, but I do want to keep replaying Dominion, and I do think part of that charm is that I'm not just... It's not a game where I have 30 special powers in my deck. It's a game where I get to use like 3 of them.
Yeah.
It feels like each game. And so that does keep me coming back, as it were.
And for what it's worth, like, I do think that there are other, like Shards of Infinity is a good example. And I'm not as familiar with Star Realms, but Shards of Infinity, where it feels like they've honed that timing exactly right, where it's just like, it's just small enough, and it really just builds and builds and builds to the point where it just like has this big finish where you're just suddenly doing a ton of damage and the game is over in a way that always does feel very, very satisfying. So yeah, I think there are a few games in that realm that kind of fit the bill for me.
And I mean, to be clear, we play games back to back. We're not just a one and done sort of group. Just want to make that abundantly clear. All right, that is going to do it for our discussion on Oops, all Foreplay. If you have games that you love, but you don't, the good part is like fleeting, or you just want to do more of that good part and it leads to replayability for you, or maybe it's annoying and you just want more of that sugar, put it in your mouth. Come to the Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord and tell us about those games, or send us an email at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. It is much appreciated. Thank you to Heart Society Music for their song, What's on Your Mind, Kid, from their album Wake the Queens. Thank you, Mark and Neelan, for this elaborate joke that we have made as an entire episode. Here we are. So long and goodbye.
Bye-bye. Goodbye.